"We thought you were in London," my mother said, staring at me through the crack of my own front door. She did not open it. She did not apologize. She just kept her hand on the brand new deadbolt she had installed while I was away. Over her shoulder, I saw my sister Alice lying on my white sofa, drinking red wine with her shoes on. "Alice lost her apartment," Mom said, as if that explained why my digital lock had been drilled out. "She needs this house more than you do. Go stay at a hotel." They had not just broken in, they had moved in. "Open the door, Mom." My voice was low, vibrating in my chest. I was not asking. I was warning her. Wendy hesitated, then cracked the door open another inch, keeping her foot firmly planted against the frame. She did not look guilty. She looked annoyed, like I was a solicitor interrupting dinner. "Keep your voice down," she hissed. "The twins are finally asleep in the guest room. Or, well, their room now." My stomach turned over. "Their room. Mom, I live here. This is my house, and Alice is your sister." She shot back, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. "She was evicted yesterday, Megan. Travis lost his job again, and the landlord put their things on the curb. What were we supposed to do? Let them sleep in the van?" She stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind her, the heavy click of that unauthorized deadbolt echoing like a gunshot. She crossed her arms, blocking my view of my own living room. "We knew you were in London for another week," she said, as if my travel schedule was the problem here. "We figured we would get them settled before you got back so it would not be a shock. We have already moved their beds in. Dad came over this morning and enrolled Lucas in the elementary school down the street. It is done, Megan. It was a tactical strike. They call it a fait accompli, an accomplished fact. By moving the furniture, changing the locks, and registering the kids for school, they had created a reality on the ground that made removing them seem impossible. They were not asking for a favor. They were daring me to be the monster who reverses it." "You used the spare key," I said. "The one I gave you for emergencies." "This is an emergency," she snapped. "Your sister has nowhere to go. And look at this place. 3 bedrooms, 3,000 square ft. And it is just you and a laptop. It is selfish, Megan. It is wasteful." Inside, I saw Alice walk past the window. She was wearing my cashmere robe. She looked comfortable, safe, and completely unbothered by the fact that she had stolen my sanctuary. "I want them out," I said. Wendy's face crumbled, shifting instantly from aggression to martyrdom. This was her favorite weapon, weaponized pity. "How can you be so cold? Look at those babies in there. They have been through so much trauma. They finally feel safe here. If you kick them out tonight, the police will see a rich aunt throwing toddlers onto the street. Is that who you are?" She was not appealing to my love. She was leveraging my shame. She knew I would not drag screaming children out of their beds. She was counting on my morality to subsidize Alice's lack of it. "I need to think," I said. "You do that," Wendy said, turning back to the door. "We will save you a plate." She slipped back inside and locked the deadbolt. I stood on my own porch, staring at the wood grain, realizing I was effectively homeless at my own address. I turned and walked to my rental car, my legs feeling heavy and numb. I sat in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For years, I thought my success was something my mother was proud of. I thought the promotions, the salary, the beautiful house were points on a scoreboard that proved I was the good daughter. I was wrong. Sitting there in the dark, watching the glow of my living room lights I paid for, I finally understood. To Wendy, I was not a person. I was a resource. I was a silo of grain to be harvested whenever Alice, the golden child, was hungry. My stability was not a virtue. It was a backup generator for their chaos. They did not love me for my success. They felt entitled to it. I looked at the house one last time. They thought they had won because they were inside and I was outside. They thought they had checkmated me with guilt. But they forgot one thing. I solve problems for a living, and I never enter a negotiation without a kill switch. I walked back up to the porch. I did not knock. I just waited. When Wendy opened the door, she was holding a plate of lasagna, a smug smile plastered on her face. I knew you would be sensible, she said, extending the plate. I ignored it. I am not hungry, I said, my voice calm, professional, the voice I used when firing underperforming contractors. I have thought about it. You are right. I cannot throw Alice and the kids out on the street. Wendy's shoulders dropped 3 in. Relief. Victory. Oh, thank God. I knew you had a heart. Megan. Come in. Come in. The twins are dying to see their auntie. But, I said, stopping her before she could usher me inside. If they are staying, we need to do this right. I cannot have 5 people living here off the books. My insurance will not cover it. And if anything happens to the kids, I would be liable. Wendy waved a hand. We do not need to involve insurance. It is just family helping family. It is asset protection. Mom, I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The smell of cheap wine and diaper cream hit me instantly. And actually, I have a better idea. If Alice stays here as my estate caretaker, I can put her on my company payroll. It is a tax write-off for me and for her. Well, it means full corporate health insurance. I saw Alice's ears perk up from the living room. She was still on the couch, but she had lowered her wine glass. Health insurance? Alice asked, sitting up. Like, dental and vision. Everything. I lied smoothly. Gold tier. No deductibles. But to make it legal, you have to be an employee. That means signing an employment contract. It was the greed hook. I knew Alice. She had not worked a real job in 6 years. And Travis's freelance gigs barely covered beer money, let alone a dentist. The promise of free, high-end benefits was the one thing that could override her laziness. I can have the papers drawn up in an hour, I said, pulling out my laptop. It is standard stuff. The job description is basically keep the house standing. In exchange, you get the room, board, and the benefits package. That sounds really generous, Alice said, narrowing her eyes. She was suspicious, but the greed was winning. It is a win-win, I said. I get a tax break. You get security. I sat at my kitchen island, which was covered in sticky juice rings, and started typing. I was not writing a lease. A lease creates a landlord-tenant relationship, which in this state means I would need a court order and 6 months to evict her. I was writing a caretaker agreement. Internally, I recited the legal distinction like a mantra. A tenant pays rent and has possession. A lessee, like a hotel guest or a living nanny, has a revocable privilege to be on the property. If the employment ends, the license ends immediately. No probate, no eviction court, just a trespassing charge. I added the clauses burying Theleth all ones in the middle of the benefits section. Clause 4A. Housing is provided strictly as a condition of employment. Clause 9C. Termination of employment results in immediate revocation of housing license. Clause 12. Employee consents to 247 video monitoring in common areas for asset protection purposes. And the final nail. Clause 15. Employee authorizes employer to conduct comprehensive background and credit checks for insurance. Bonding. I printed it out on my wireless printer, which thankfully they had not unplugged. Here, I said, sliding the warm pages across the granite. Sign this and you are covered. Alice picked up the pen. Wendy beamed, looking between us like she had single-handedly brokered world peace. They thought they had just secured a free ride for life. They had no idea they were signing a confession. Alice scanned the document, her eyes darting over the paragraphs like a stone skipping water. She was not reading. She was hunting for keywords. Benefits, salary, zero rent. Do I really have to log maintenance hours? She asked, tapping a fingernail on page 3. Travis does most of the heavy lifting. It is just for the IRS audit trail, I said, leaning against the counter, keeping my posture relaxed. Put down 5 hours a week watering plants, checking the HVAC. As long as the paperwork exists, the benefits apply. Wendy hovered over her shoulder, practically vibrating with impatience. Just sign it, Alice. Your sister is offering you a lifeline. Don't pick it apart until it breaks. Alice sighed, the dramatic, put-upon sigh of someone being forced to accept charity. She clicked the pen. Fine, but I need the insurance card by Monday. The twins have checkups. Monday, I promised. She pressed the pen to the paper. The blue ink flowed, carving her name onto the signature line. Alice P. Miller. I watched the loops of her handwriting close. It was a fascinating moment. In her mind, she was signing a lease for a free mansion. In the eyes of the law, she was signing a confession that she had no property rights. That signature stripped her of every tenant protection the state of Oregon offered. She was not a resident anymore. She was an employee, and in at-will employment states, you can be fired for any reason at any time. The trap snapped shut the moment she lifted the pen. And here, I said, signing my own name with a flourish. Official. I pulled a slip of paper from my pocket. These are the new door codes. I reactivated the smart locks. The manual deadbolt Mom installed. Let's just keep that unlocked for now. Okay. Fire safety. Wendy snatched the paper. See, was that so hard? Now we can all breathe. I have to go, I said, checking my watch. My flight to London leaves in 3 hours, and I still need to get to the airport. Go, Wendy said, shooing me toward the door. She was already opening the fridge, claiming my territory. We will hold down the fort. Have a safe trip. I walked out the front door, the same one they had barred me from an hour ago. I got into my rental car and drove down the block, parking just around the corner, out of sight. I was not going to London. I was going to the Embassy Suites 3 meters away. I pulled out my iPad and opened the security app. The feed from the kitchen camera popped up in crisp 4K resolution. Alice was standing by the kitchen island. She was not celebrating. She was rushing to the front door. A moment later, she reappeared on screen, clutching a thick stack of envelopes. Mail she must have intercepted from the mailbox while I was arguing with Mom. She did not open them. She looked over her shoulder, checking if Wendy was watching, and then shoved the entire stack into the back of the pantry behind the cereal boxes. My eyes narrowed. People do not hide junk mail. They hide warnings. I started the car. The trap was set, but it looked like Alice had already brought her own shovel to dig the grave. I wasn't in London. I was 3 miles away in a junior suite at the Embassy Suites, eating a club sandwich and watching my life fall apart in 4K resolution. I had set up my command center on the hotel desk. My laptop displayed the security feeds from the kitchen, the living room, and the hallway. The caretaker agreement. Alice signed authorized 24/7 video monitoring in common areas for asset protection. She had signed it without reading it, and now that signature was the only thing keeping me sane. On screen, my living room looked like a frat house after a bender. It had been less than 6 hours since I left. Alice was already breaking every single rule in the contract. She sat at the kitchen island, a lit cigarette dangling from her fingers, ashing directly onto my quartz countertop. Smoke curled up toward the ceiling sensors. In the living room, my 5-year-old nephew Lucas was drawing on my white walls with a permanent marker. Wendy watched him do it. She did not stop him. She was too busy moving my furniture, dragging my bookshelf across the hardwood floor to make room for a massive, ugly recliner. They must have hauled in from the U-Haul. I took a sip of hotel wine. The disrespect was total. It was absolute, and it was recorded. Alice pulled out her phone. I turned up the volume on my laptop. The audio was crystal clear. "Yeah, she is gone." Alice laughed into the receiver. "Total sucker. She thinks I am going to maintain the HVAC. Please. I am never leaving. This place is mine now. Mom says Megan owes us for all the years she did not help." She hung up and walked to the pantry. She opened the door and pulled out that stack of envelopes she had hidden earlier. She fanned them out, her face tight with anxiety. She was not looking at them like mail. She was looking at them like a bomb she was trying to defuse. I leaned forward. I clicked the zoom function on the camera feed. The resolution held. I could read the return address on the top envelope in bold, angry black ink. Kruger and Vance, Attorneys at Law, Collections Division. I paused the feed and opened the background check I had legally ordered under Clause 15. The report was disastrous. 3 evictions in 4 years, maxed out credit cards in default, and an active civil lawsuit for $28,400 in unpaid rent and damages filed by Kruger and Vance. Alice had not just lost housing. She had committed rental fraud and disappeared to avoid being served. She was hiding in my house. My phone alerted me to smoke in the kitchen. On the camera, Alice calmly lit another cigarette, unaware she was fully recorded. She thought she was squatting in a free mansion. She did not realize she was a fugitive in a glass house and I had the coordinates. I terminated her employment by email, revoked her right to occupy the property, and gave her 2 hours to leave. She laughed, claiming squatters' rights. She believed she was a tenant. She was wrong. I shut off the internet, dropped the heat to 50, locked the system, sealed the fridge, and activated pulsing alert lights. Panic followed. One by one, allies cracked. Her partner left. The house grew colder. I then called Kruger and Vance and gave them her exact location. Within the hour, a process server knocked. Alice was served. The truth hit instantly. They fled the house in chaos, abandoning everything. I reset the system, changed all codes, removed her access, blocked every number, and reclaimed my home. By morning, it was professionally cleaned. Alice now faces wage garnishment and permanent rental blacklisting. Sitting alone in the restored silence, I understood the lesson clearly. The most powerful punishment is not confrontation. It is withdrawal, absence, freedom.